This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way. Hi, and welcome to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins, your host, and we are back this week in our season that is a journey to the Horizon Texas Conference. As we continue on this journey to the horizon, we are joined once again by leaders within the newly forming conference who will help us as we journey together, taking 3 conferences and becoming one. I am so excited to be joined today by Tom Long and Cassie Wade, District Superintendents in the newly forming conference. And thank you so much for coming on Pod Strangely Warmed. Our hope is, you need to know, our prayer as PSW family here is that you will raise the DS bar. So far, we've had Edlund and Philip on a couple of times, and I don't want to say there's been something left to be desired there, but we're hoping y'all can raise the bar today. So we are so thankful that y'all have been here. One of my favorite moments with them from General Conference is we were sitting around a table like this at the General Board of Church and Society booth, because they had let us film in that space. And we were trying to get ready to start recording. Dustin had everything set up and ready, and I'm getting ready to go. And Philip and Edlund are both on their phones typing madly away. And so we got to record DS's in the wild there for a minute, right? Yeah. Probably a reality that you've experienced at some point along the way. Tom, you were telling me before we came in, you had to leave your phone in the other room just to make sure that it didn't, wasn't going off while we were doing this.
That is true.
Thank you again on behalf of the community that is our Pod Strangely Warm family for making time to be here. All jokes aside, we think it's a really important conversation. And I think y'all will be really important leaders as our 3 conferences come together. And we'll get to what that looks like here in a little bit. But as we get started, Cassie, I'd love to hear a little bit about when you're not DSing. What is life like when you're hanging with family, or when you're just being able to choose how you spend your time?
Yeah. I am Moku. That's my grandma name, and it is delightful. I have a grandson that's in his 2nd year of college, playing football, and so I love to dote on him, and all the way down to a 9-year-old. So we do a lot of family things when we're not DSing, but there's a lot of DS time. So there's mostly just time for family then, beyond that.
Very good, very good. Now, do you get to use your preacher voice from time to time in the stands at the football games? Is that an invitation to get loud in those places? And
that's interesting. I don't guess I've ever used my preacher voice there. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
It's usually when I just play Moku.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Tom, what about you when you're not living this DS life, which is a fairly new thing for you? We're on week 9 or 10 or so.
I think week 9.
Okay.
So, yes.
So when you're not DSing, what does life look like outside of this work?
Well, we're relocated to San Angelo, living on 1.5 acres. And so when I'm not DSing and I'm at home, we're getting settled in there. And I've got 2 college-age daughters.
Very good.
And so one is a senior and one is nearly a sophomore.
Okay.
And so we're just spending time with family and then outdoors.
Very good. What's your favorite thing to do in the outdoors?
Love to work in the yard.
Okay.
Love to nurture. We've got some trees. Just try to be out there, to be outside.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Tom, thank you for making time and getting off of the 1.5 acres to come into the city here, into our glorified closet, and have this fun conversation.
Yes.
One of the great gifts of my life in ministry has been the couple of seasons of my life where we've been in a little bit more of the country, right?
Yes.
And there's something beautiful about wide open spaces.
Yes,
and,
there is.
And only one of my appointments have we managed the beauty of wide open spaces that are really easy to access and good grocery stores, right? There's often a kind of a counterbalancing challenge there. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Yes.
As we make our way collectively toward the Horizon Texas Conference, Cassie, your legacy conference is the North Texas Conference.
Yes.
Tom, your legacy conference is the Northwest Texas Conference.
Yes.
And so as we make our way toward the new conference, is there something like a piece of the heart of the conference that has shaped and formed you that you hope makes its way into the newly forming Horizon Conference?
For Northwest Texas, there is a sense of resilience. And I, know that will be a part of the new Horizon Texas Conference, but also churches and people who are filled with hope and faith. And I think those are key ingredients as we begin the unification. And as we like to say, in the wide open spaces of Northwest Texas, we embrace the horizon every morning. And so,
Amen.
those three things, I think, are part of what Northwest Texas brings.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For me, it's a sense of excellence, excellence in any ministry context. And so I serve mostly rural settings and town and country kind of settings. And our churches in their individual settings are always looking for a way to stand out in their communities and do the good work. And so I think that sense of excellence, I hope we bring along with us. I have experienced that as I've engaged with people from the other conferences, and so I hope that stays with us.
Sounds like a pretty good conference to me. Resilient,
Yes.
faithful, bringing a sense of excellence that is contextual.
Contextual.
Right? Because I've served giant suburban churches, I've served town and country churches, I've served suburban or rural county seats, and excellence looks different in each one of those
It does.
places.
It does.
Serving Jesus looks different, but it's still really profoundly possible and powerful in the midst of those spaces. We've heard a little bit about your hope, right, in the midst of this time. As you have walked the road of a DS, right, either your early days or, Cassie, you're going into year 4 now, right? You've had the opportunity to see churches thrive, to see churches do meaningful work, to see churches serve Jesus and neighbor well. Is there a particular story? We're here to tell our story, right? That's the role we fill within the annual conference here as a part of this Pod Strings We Warm story. Is there a story from your last 10 weeks of DSing or from the last year of your time serving your district that really just captures your heart and maybe not enough people have heard, or maybe you just want to amplify a little bit today?
So I'll tell a story. I have a congregation that thought maybe it was time for them to become a legacy congregation, and they were tired. They'd done the good work, and they were ready to just move to a different kind of season. So we had our church conference, and what happened was that people within the community mobilized, came in support of our church conference, and members who had not been active, when they realized that they might lose their church home, showed up, voted to keep the church open, and now that church has a new life, a new sense of life, and it's exciting to see the ways that they are entering a new season. From the brink of what we might call the ashes or death, they have experienced resurrection in a very real way. That was
Very
exciting. Yeah.
Well, it's such an amazing gift, right? The question, and I think it was Adam Hamilton, but it's bounced around so much, so it's hard to know. But if your church closed tomorrow, would your community know?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
In one of those moments, the clear answer is yes, and a vibrant yes, and not just a yes and we'll be sad about it, but a yes, and we're going to unite our life to make sure that it doesn't happen.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Right, yeah.
Beautiful.
Great story.
Amen.
Yeah.
Can you give that church a shout out today? What church is that?
That is Martin Memorial in Detroit, Texas, not Detroit. Detroit.
D,
you have to say
two
it
E's.
correctly in East Texas.
Very good. Detroit. That is such a beautiful gift. Tom, how about you? You've been on this 9 or 10 weeks. You've heard.
Yes,
yes. And there's a recognition that sometimes what comes to the table early is I've been meaning to get a DS's attention about this for, whatever. But has there been a story of life and vitality and hope that has caught your heart in this
My
time?
very first church visit, invitation came to come. They were dedicating a new organ for the sanctuary. And so I was there for that. Sanctuary was filled, but there was also vibrant worship, a wonderful children's message, and then praying to send youth off for a mission trip.
Oh, so good.
And then the funny thing, it was my first church visit as the district superintendent. And as I made my way around, hi, I'm Tom. And my wife nudged me and said, well, you might tell them you're the new district superintendent. So, yes, still getting into this role.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that idea just for a little bit, Tom. This not just getting into the new role, but that moment that happens when you come to visit churches, right? It's a rare occurrence that as a district superintendent, you get to walk in and be unknown,
Yes,
right? Often
yes.
you walk in and folks know you either through appointive processes or through supervisory process or any number of things in which you come and join in those big celebrations and other things. What is something you've become aware of every time you walk into the back of a church or to the side of a church for the first time? Because on the and how is that experience different now as a DS than it was when you were sitting in the pastor's seat and had the DS walking in the room?
Yeah.
Well, for me, every church has a story. Even when I was serving the local church and now that I'm in this role, every church has a story. And I think they long to tell the story. And so when I go to visit churches, I want to hear the story. And often it is through worship. And as I tell the clergy when I come in, all I'm here to do is simply to worship and to get to know the folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's for me what it is.
Very good.
Yeah, same here. I spent the first year intentionally getting to know all the churches and building relationships, not only with the clergy, but also with laity.
Yeah.
So when I walk in churches now, it's like, we're so glad to see you. There's not a sense of angst. What gets an angst is the telephone call in March.
Oh, fair.
Is often causes a little bit of anxiety. But usually when I visit, that's not it. And it's because they feel like they can be who they are, and I absolutely delight in who they are. That's why I enjoy this ministry so much as DS.
Well, and having served on the pastor side of that, having a DS who delights in the ministry that is happening in each space and is an incredible gift, right? When we know our DSs well enough, and y'all know the churches well enough, it is such a powerful thing that can happen there, right? And the church becomes a radical support and the biggest cheerleader, right? To come alongside,
Exactly.
tell the story, and encourage
Yes.
each church in its own local place. Cassie, over the last couple of years, have you developed the disarming phrase for somebody you need to call in March and it's not about appointments?
I usually start with, "This is Cassie, but it's not about appointments, so take a breath." You know?
Okay.
Or if it is about appointments, "This is Cassie, and we got to have a talk. So take a breath and let's have a
And-
talk." Yeah, so either way.
Either way, said it in the first
Right.
6 words and you've got it
Exactly.
good. Okay, very good. As we make our way into this New Horizon conference, right? The unifying conference is September 28th. It's coming very quickly. We're about a month away at this point. And one of the things I'm looking forward to most about that uniting conference and the subsequent annual conferences after that is when we all get in one room, right? The leadership from all these churches and the clergy across all 3 conferences come together and we get in one room. And historically at annual conference, one of my favorite things has been in worship when we all sing, right? Because I think it's a rule that in order to come to annual conference, you have to be willing to beller in the name of Jesus, right?
Yes.
You may need a giant bucket to carry your tune in, and that's okay, but you're going to sing with gusto, right? And you can hear it echoing off the walls. You can hear it reverberating in the space, and it's just a profound, beautiful thing for me. As y'all get ready to see the churches you're getting to know and some that you know really well, and the churches you've come to know well over these coming years, coming together, first on the 28th and then in future years at annual conferences, what's something you're looking forward to? You've named a thing from your legacy conference that you hope is present in the new one. What's something you're looking forward to as an experience once everyone's gathered together?
For me, it's an openness to newness, to new things, right? So that I want to meet new people. I want to hear new ideas. I've fertilized the ground to think about this as not something to distract from who we are, but to expand who we are, right? Giving us more opportunity, more excitement. And speaking of the singing, that is often for my churches the part that just lifts them up because they're small. And there's a difference between 7 and 20 voices on Sunday morning and 700.
Right.
And it's just, it's exhilarating to think about that.
Very good. Tom, what about you?
Oh, I can't wait for the opening worship. It's been, it seems like it's been an eternity getting to the unifying conference and just seeing everyone gathered, the clergy, the laity, all of the hard work that has gone in. And then as we worship together, we're celebrating the new opportunities that are before us. And not just the expanding of the boundaries in all 3 legacy conferences, but together, people that we're going to reach for Christ. Just the gifts and graces that are all coming together. And whether they're in rural America or in the cities, there are still people to be reached for Christ.
I love that both of you named that expansion of who we are, right? And that expansion of opportunity. This really is something that has the opportunity to be amazing, right? We think about the 3 legacy conferences, and each had their own gifts, their own graces, the things they brought to the table, and they were excellent at, right? And here we are in a moment where those can come together and meet a broader community across all of northern Texas. With a Wesleyan witness and a powerful kind of transformative experience of the gospel, right? We've got a season where we're going to need to be planting some new churches across Central Texas, across Northwest Texas. Those 2 legacy conferences were hit hard by disaffiliation, and we're going to be needing to plant some new places for new people, and we're going to have the gifts and graces of 3 conferences worth of excellence. We're going to be led by Owen in that process, and Owen is, somebody whose brain we've been picking for a while from this side of the newly forming conference, and that's just a really cool thing. And that's just one small example. Like Joy's going to lead us in an amazing way in ministries of care and healing to take that resilience that's inherent within so many of our churches and amplify it and bring it to a place where it is not just restorative to the souls of those in the community, in the church community, but also in their broader community. Because resilience is not just a church thing that's needed; it's a community thing that's needed. I think there's just so much that expands who we are, expands the opportunity, and helps us truly reach people for Jesus in a way that leaves people transformed. As y'all think about that, what is the role of DS in that, right? I think often in the United Methodist Church, district superintendents are among the list of people that everybody knows. But if you ask 10 people for a job description of what a district superintendent does outside of making appointments, right, you're going to get 10 different job descriptions, right? What is that work, right? And where does that work fit? As y'all sit in this moment, what unique gift does your role bring to this unification?
So Tom and I talk about this a lot because we serve town and country rural settings, right? And so our role is more than pastor to the pastors. We're taught that in DS Charm School or whatever they call that we go to. And it's beyond mission strategist even. It is about building the relationships that encourage and inspire the people, the laity, in those communities to do the work, the good work, right? And so I think that's the greatest gift that we can bring is that relationship and that resourcing. So I always walk into a room and I say, I'm a connector. That's what I do. I'm a connector. You already have gifts, but you need to be inspired. I got this inspiration or this resource over here, and I'm going to connect you. And then I'm going to get out of the way because God does his greatest work in the minds and hearts of the people.
Very good.
Yeah. And I think advocates for the churches that are entrusted to us. And certainly, Cassie and I have the heart for the town and country churches. That is something that is a place where I answered my call to ministry. Yeah. And so to be their strongest advocate, to help them discover resources they didn't think were there, and then new opportunities, new ways in which they can reach people in their communities. Yeah. So, yes.
Very good. Last week on the podcast, Pam shared with us that prior to working for the annual conference, one of her consulting and communication roles had been for a client that served both Chuck E. Cheese and Del Frisco's, right? And that part of their public relations, communications piece, they had to be flexible and nimble enough to serve both types of restaurant. Both are in the business of feeding people, but they do it differently, right? And I would imagine, she didn't say this, but I would imagine that the strategies used in both places can teach something to the other places. As advocates of our town and country churches, in a conference that will include town and country and rural and county seat churches, as well as suburban churches and urban churches, I asked you what gift your legacy conference brought to the table earlier. What gift do our town and country churches bring to the table that the rest of us might learn something from as we move toward the horizon together?
Yeah, our rural settings have everything they need. Their DNA is to make the most of every season. So even in seasons where they're very adaptive, in seasons where it's dry and the crops aren't growing well and things aren't coming in and the economy is tanking, they know how to do that work. And our churches show that resilience, that in those seasons, they know how to share gifts among each other. They know how to resource each other in creative ways. And I think that is the gift that they can bring to other settings to teach them also that they are a community filled with gifts and how to find those.
And I think the town and country churches understand community in a different way. In their settings, they're used to reaching across to different congregations, different ministry settings, and really showing what it looks like to be in ministry together, different denominations, for example, coming together to do Vacation Bible School, being very resourceful and faithful, faithful in all seasons.
Very good. I served First Methodist in Meridian, Texas, which is in Bosque County, 1,800 people in the town, and a little county seat church. And one of the things that was really clear to me in the first 6 months in that community was that there were a lot of kids who were struggling at our local elementary school with food insecurity, right? And at the previous big suburban church I'd been a part of, we had launched a backpack ministry that helped battle food insecurity with weekend food and things like that. And fairly simple, but really important. And we started running the numbers on the number of kids that would qualify for free and reduced lunch and would, potentially benefit from this at our local school. And my church at First United Methodist, their eyes got big when we started looking at the numbers. And pretty soon it became a collaboration with Cowboy Church and with First Baptist and with the Lutherans. And still to this day, nearly a decade later, right? Churches are partnering together to feed children in a meaningful way.
Yes.
And are pumped about it. And I think one of the other beauties of this kind of collaboration, right, is it not just teaches us something about ourselves and that ecumenical spirit that lives within us, but in our small and town and country churches and communities, there's a level of the division that we're seeing across the nation that breaks down a little bit when we're shaking hands and looking in the eye and serving alongside each other.
Yes.
And so, when I think back to those food packing events that we'd have people who voted every different way gathered in the line together, right? But they were gathered with purpose, with passion, and to serve the kids together, no matter what church they went to, no matter who they voted for. And that was a really cool thing. And I've tried to bring, as I've come back into Dallas-Fort Worth, to bring, how do we capture some of that spirit and bring it to our more suburban communities and our more suburban churches. And it's not always easier because there's thousands of things going on, right? It's harder to break through the noise of life literally on the interstate. And sometimes just, when there's so many people in a given space, it's harder to break through. But that spirit is one we'd all learn from and we'd all benefit from. Y'all have done some intentional work over, and Cassie, this may be more of a question for you, right? The cabinets, at least of North Texas and Central Texas, for what, a year and a half now, 18 months, have been meeting together pretty consistently. How have those meetings changed as we've gotten more FaceTime with each other and gotten to know each other a little more fully? And, Philip Rhodes goes from a guy you might have heard of one time to somebody who you know better and better each and every time.
Well, I've said this in cabinet meetings, is that we have the advantage of, we have gone past that awkward first date
Right.
and learning who's who and how we work together.
Yeah.
And so this has become a way of life for us. And our churches are a little behind that curve.
Yeah.
But what I was excited about with our new staff, we pulled us all together just recently for some onboarding. And I looked around that room, more diverse and much younger. And I knew that we were much younger when half the time I found myself asking, what do they mean by that? So
Yeah.
I was encouraged that we have, that we're beginning to intentionally think about our mission fields and what they look like.
Okay.
So that was encouraging me.
Tom, you've been in just the little bit of those meetings over the last little while as the representative of the Legacy Northwest Texas Conference, and as you've gotten to, you may still be on like date number 4 with these people at this point. I don't know how that how the metaphor works in this thing. What has your experience been like as you've gotten to meet more consistently with your colleagues from across the other 2 Legacy conferences and become more of one in the Horizon Conference?
Well, I've been meeting since February.
Okay.
And so they have just, gracious and welcoming, and now it's moved past that, everyone has a seat at the table. And even with the onboarding is that, we're collaborating together and moving away from, well, you're from this conference, is that we are a conference. And that everyone has been brought together with purpose, with gifts and graces to embrace this new Horizon Texas Conference. And so it's been great.
It's cool to be a part when God's doing something new.
Yes, yes, it is.
And it feels like that's what God is doing in this time, right? If we had talked back in 2008, 2009, 2010, in the Perkins days, about, there's 2 very distinct conferences with 2 distinct culture, we wouldn't have been able to envision this.
No.
And yet here we are, right? Tom, if we'd known each other back in those days, we wouldn't have been able to envision this. And yet here we are. And God's about to do a powerful and new and wonderful thing. If you had something you wanted to say directly to the lay leadership, the clergy of the churches that will make up this Horizon Texas Conference, what would be your kind of one most important thing? If we leave here today and haven't said this, we're stupid and we've messed up, right? What's your one thing that you want the churches and the leaders of those churches to hear in this time?
Yeah, I would say we need you. We need every single one of you. None of us can do this alone. We don't do it in isolation. The most wonderful thing about our God is that our God created us in community and gifted us for those communities. And so we need every single one of you at this table, and we need your voice.
Amen.
And I would invite the laity and the clergy of the districts that have been entrusted with to don't give up. To embrace this new opportunity that is before us, and to be ready to come on September the 28th and to come in force, knowing just with anticipation of what God is going to do.
Okay.
And that it is going to take every one of us, no matter our ministry setting.
Amen. As we get ready to wrap up today, I've got one more question that I probably should have asked you earlier because it's this important and this pressing. As district superintendent, you get to travel all over your district, right? You probably spend more time in your car than you want to. But you also get to build relationships with clergy and laity, and as good Methodists, those relationships often get built over calories that don't count because they're church calories, right? What is the best bite of food you have had while serving Jesus as in the role of district superintendent, and where did you get it? Is there a barbecue joint in your district that's just amazing? Is there a burger joint? Is there, and I hate to go back to First Methodist Meridian, but we had one of our good church ladies that made apple hand pies that you would, get in a fist fight for because they were that good. What's the best bite of goodness that you've had while serving Jesus on the road as a DS?
Would have to be what we called senior cake, and it was a cake recipe that's kind of chocolate with fudge frosting on it
Okay.
that we served at every senior banquet that church put on for their small community. And so in my travels, I served that church, but then now as a DS for that church, I can't wait to go back and have another bite of senior cake.
Okay. Very good.
And mine is probably different, but when you grow up in rural America, it is the taste of Dairy Queen ice cream. And so, I'm always excited when you're passing through that you can get a Blizzard.
Yeah.
And figure out how you can eat that and drive. So, yes. So,
I think Dairy Queen, the advertisement was always right, the Texas stop sign or something like
yes,
that.
yes.
But
yes.
every time you drove by a Dairy Queen, you almost always saw a United Methodist Church sign right afterwards.
Of
so
course,
I think there's
of course.
an
Yes.
intended connection
Think
and
so.
opportunity
Yes,
there.
yes. It's either that or Allsup's gut bomb.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you got to tell me about the gut bomb.
Allsup's.
Allsup's,
the
those
convenience
greasy
store.
Okay, yeah.
little
They have
fried
the
burrito.
best fried burritos.
Oh,
And
okay.
they
And
are a gut bomb.
But they're
will
great.
tear you
I mean,
up.
and that's where
Yeah.
part of my call to ministry, because I worked at Allsup's
Okay.
many, many years ago. So, yeah.
Wow.
But you got to get them fresh.
Well, I can imagine. Anything named a gut bomb, you don't want day
That
old
is
gut
not
bomb.
the official name. But yes, when
Okay.
you enter into my part of the world, they are the world famous Allsup's burrito.
Okay. If you're ever in Waco, go to VTEX Barbecue, and they call it the Gut Pack. That is the official name.
Okay.
It is chopped brisket, sausage, beans, Fritos, sauce, onions, peppers. If you want the peppers, pickles, barbecue sauce, all in one. Just a big to-go container thing.
my gosh.
Full. It's so amazing.
Okay.
Now, you just can't have anything you need your brain to work for the second half
Yes,
of the day,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
But
Okay.
is a gift from God.
Yeah.
So get
and
the
you
gut
know-
pack anytime you're in Waco.
And David Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we both come from Northwest Texas. And of course, after annual conference, we were ready to break. And I said, well, come on, let's go have supper. And of course, within walking distance was Dairy Queen.
Of course.
So that's where you ate?
That's where we ate.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. See, there are plenty of advantages to being Methodist. Knowing good people with good food is one of them. So, well, Tom, thank you so much
You're
for your time.
welcome.
I hope you get a Blizzard soon. Cassie, thank you so much for your time. I hope you get some of that senior cake
That's right.
here pretty
Yes.
soon. And thank you for joining us today on Pod Strangely Warmed. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins. This has been Pod Strangely Warmed. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even more.